All right, I've got my new enclosure. It's time to build my bioactive. Wait, this isn't fitting. And the top doesn't open? Oh man. Hello, me hearties, and welcome to the 16th video from Heart Scales. We've been working on a lot of different projects, and I'm hoping that will result in our content coming out a little more frequently. Fingers crossed. For today's video, we're going to talk about the small bioactive enclosure that I set up for Starr Berry, who you see here, my lily white crested gecko. As you'll find out during the course of this video, I am definitely new at bioactives, and I had a couple struggles and obstacles with it as I went through my first time journey making one. I've been interested in bioactives since I've started seeing them from lots of other reptile creators, and some advice I got was to start out with a crusty bioactive. And that was because they spend nearly all of their time off the ground anyway, and have comparatively small enclosures to many other snakes and lizards, so it should be easier, less expensive, and if I completely mess up, my crusty will be okay because they're relying on the soil being perfect. They're going to be up on their branches and their coconuts. So initially, I was going to use a herpcult closure you saw in the beginning, but I ran into a few snags. Personally, I also wasn't a fan of how loud and strong the snap was from the close of the door to the enclosure because of all the magnets that they had going around it. I do understand why they have it that way. It's to ensure your gecko doesn't get out, and that's really good. It just wasn't for me. But I was planning on getting just a larger one with an open top. However, after I sent my enclosure back to do so that I could fit my cool new cork bark background in that wasn't fitting, I actually found an Exoterra that somebody was selling for $60. So I went and picked that up instead, then deep cleaned and triple sanitized it, and set about attaching my background, that really cool, nice piece of cork bark that I was determined to use, but it turned out to still not fit, and so this time I decided to make it fit. In order to attach the background to the glass, I tried using Gorilla Wood Glue, which seemed like it would do the trick, and it would have been nice if that would have worked, but it didn't. After letting it dry, it fell right off. So I went to plan B, making my own background. It was something I'd wanted to try anyway, but was a little nervous about destroying my enclosure, but at this point I decided to just go for it. I purchased the Great Stuff Pond and Stone foam spray, which worked great, and it's pretty fast to cure. You can tell because when it's not done, it'll still be mushy and soft, whereas when it's done, it'll be pretty stiff and relatively inflexible. So I set some pieces of cork bark on the back and then sprayed foam around it while my little brother held the piece of cork I wanted sticking further out in position until the foam was dry enough that it would hold them on its own. By the way, make sure you're wearing gloves when working with spray foam and silicone. There are times when it's necessary, and this is one of them. Once the spray foam was dry, I cut off and scraped away extra chunks I didn't want, and then applied a 100% black silicone aquarium sealant to the foam, which you see here, then spread it out as evenly as I could over the foam with my gloves. I do have to say the black silicone was vividly noxious, and it will hurt your lungs and eyes if you're not careful. I cannot recommend enough to only use this in a very well ventilated area, away from all pets and kids, while wearing your gloves, and also an N95 mask would be really good. Personally, this stuff was so unpleasant and toxic feeling that I probably won't be using it again myself, so if anyone has some alternative suggestions that will also work well to hold moss and substrate to a background like this, please feel free to share that with me in the comments. I would appreciate it. Now, once I had spread around the silicone to my satisfaction, I sprinkled sphagnum moss and eco earth onto it to complete the natural look of my background. I did originally try to add in some small pots to include little plants in my background, but the trick I'd seen to attach straws to the pots and then put foam over the straws in order to allow for water drainage for the plants didn't work with these little terracotta pots, so I eventually gave up and just used wood and dirt instead. If you have added plants to a background without a drainage system in place and your plants have survived, I'd love to know what plants you use so I can give it a try in the future. After allowing a few days for the silicone to cure, I gave it a few good shakes, let the excess come off naturally, and noticed there were some splotches of silicone and foam on the sides of the glass that I really didn't want there. So I broke out my handy dandy box cutter and got to work. A basic box cutter actually works really well to scrape this stuff off. And then I used the Basecamp vinegar spray by Komodo Reptile, which is wonderful for glass enclosures when you want to make them shine, to wipe it down and make it look as nice as I could. The next step was to add in the drainage layer. I purchased the tankless crusty Bioactive kit from Josh's Frogs, which came with these LECA balls, and you want a layer of about 2 to 3 inches at the bottom. LECA, or LECA, is an acronym for Lightweight Expanded Clay Aggregate. So it's essentially just little balls of clay, which are often used in hydroponic gardening. These are great because they not only soak up water and expand, providing drainage and a source of ongoing hydration for the soil above it, but they also provide aeration, making your Bioactive the perfect environment for isopods and springtails to thrive. Now, you do have to rinse the LECA balls thoroughly using chlorine-free water, as you see me doing here. It's important that any water you use in your reptile's tank is free of both chlorines and chloramines. Distilled water is free of these chemicals, but it does lack the necessary minerals you and your pet need as well, so I don't have that in my house. Reverse osmosis or RO water is a great option if you have it, but the filters are pricey, and using a lot of RO water simply to rinse LECA balls may not be within your budget. So I opted to use my regular tap water with ReptiSafe and rinse the LECA in the only strainer I had, which unfortunately isn't very big because I don't cook and really have need for one, and poured it over the LECA 1 cup at a time until the water ran clear. Needless to say, it took some time for me to rinse all my LECA balls and get that 2 to 3 inch layer of them in the bottom of my enclosure, but I did eventually do so. Then I added the mesh filter on top of the LECA, which also came with the Bioactive kit, and this is a necessary step to prevent the soil from simply falling through all the LECA and rendering them useless. And I poked and tucked the sides and edges down between the LECA layer and the glass using a butter spreader. After the mesh was secured over the drainage layer, I set about adding in the substrate. The Bioactive kit came with 10 quarts of this really nice bio bedding, which consists of a blend of multiple organic ingredients, micronutrients, and I believe a starter colony of beneficial bacteria, which will help the tank stay cleaner longer. It helps the stank. Actually, it kind of does. And it's perfect for tropical species that need a lot of ventilation, such as the New Caledonian geckos like Leeches, gargoyles, and, of course, cresties. So I mixed the substrate with water, dechlorinated with ReptiSafe, and I knew it was ready when I could squeeze it and have the bedding stick together but not drip water. Now I could decorate with some plants, such as this Anthurium crystallinum, which is a rainforest native, and this crocodile fern, which is also a tropical species, plus this adorable hanging coconut and bridge that I found on Etsy from a seller called Reptiles of Eden. And I also added another coconut hide on the bottom and some cork bark. I then added some of the leaf litter that came with the Bioactive kit to the bottom as well. This provides food for the cleanup crew, which consists of the springtails and isopods we'll be adding in a moment, and I put in a little magnetic mushroom ledge. Here are the little isopods I added in addition to the springtails. These are, I believe, dwarf tropical white isopods, and the kit came with 10 of them. Isopods and springtails together make up that cleanup crew I mentioned before. They're basically what you probably knew growing up as pill bugs or potato bugs or roly-polies is what I called them, but they're actually crustaceans, and they're almost always present in Bioactive reptile builds because they break down the waste from the reptile into forms that are usable by the live plants in the Bioactive build. All the elements that I've added together using this kit come together to create a mini ecosystem that does a pretty good job of maintaining itself. Now, the second to last step was really just to add in the necessary tech and some finishing touches like my hygrometers, my thermometers, and some perches that I got later, as well as a food and water station. Finally, I managed to build this Bioactive, and it is now home to my sweet little Starr Berry, who spends her days sleeping inside her hanging coconut hide, as you can see here, and she spends her nights exploring and searching for food. That's it, you guys. That was the journey of my first bioactive build. I plan to make more in the future, hopefully with less hiccups, and in the meantime, keep an eye out for the next Get to Know Our Snake series episode, featuring a very special member of our family that you've mainly only seen in our intro. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and acquire snakes. Liking and subscribing will really help us out as we try to get more educational and enjoyable content out for you all, and will help keep track of when new videos are published. Stay curious, my fellow keepers and protectors of scaly things. Bye!